Hello and welcome to the Webcast for Wednesday, August 26th. I'm SouthOps meteorologist Jonathan O'Brien. We have clear skies to start the day as high pressure remains in control of our weather. There's hardly even a hint of a marine layer out there today, and with the full sunshine, an extremely hot day is in store. We've already been hot, and if anything, today is going to kick things up even more in the temperature department, with today likely being the hottest day of this stretch in many areas. Most of the valleys and even the inland coastal plain will get into the triple digits, with readings as high as 108 to 110 possible in the warmest Southern California valleys. We'll start to see some very slow cooling over the next couple of days, but things are going to remain very hot through the end of this week. Humidities will also remain low today, with minimums around 10 to 20%, and as we've been seeing for several nights now, fair to locally poor recoveries were prevalent once again last night in many of the foothills and mountains. Winds will remain light overall today and for the next few days, with terrain effects dominating in most cases. With still a little bit of lingering monsoonal moisture and unstable conditions due to the heat, isolated afternoon showers and thunderstorms will continue through at least Friday over the Southern California mountains and deserts south and east of I-15 and along and east of the Sierra Crest. However, as is typically the case, these storms should remain slow-moving and wet and not be a major concern. I also want to touch on a rather significant and sudden development in the forecast over the past day or so. It is now looking very likely that Tropical Storm Iselle in the East Pacific is going to bring at least minor but potentially significant impacts to the region from late Thursday through Friday. The most likely, highest confidence impact from Iselle is that we can expect a large increase in cloud cover on Thursday and Friday. This may leave temperatures cooler than expected, though it will still be warm and humidity would not increase very much, since it would mostly be upper atmospheric moisture. But the overcast conditions will likely bring some reduction in fire danger relative to previous expectations for Thursday and Friday. However, there is also some potential for Iselle to bring dry thunderstorm concerns to the region, mainly across central California. If enough instability can be realized, then isolated to scattered showers and thunderstorms could affect all of central California from late Thursday through Friday, with any storms likely to be fast-moving and mostly dry, separate from the more traditional monsoonal activity occurring across the interior. While this is not the most likely outcome in terms of thunderstorms, it is a possibility and one that should be watched very closely over the next day or so. Looking briefly at the bigger picture, strong high pressure remains centered over the desert southwest, bringing us these excessively hot conditions. However, as you can see on the upper air maps here, we finally get a much different look to the pattern by later this weekend and into next week. All indications now are that a fairly deep and persistent troughing pattern will set up across the west coast starting this weekend, bringing us a dramatic cool down and ridding us of the current very high fire danger conditions. So once we get past that very uncertain period with Iselle late this week, we can start to turn our attention to what does look like some real relief on the way heading into next week. As that troughing pattern develops, a significant cool down is on the way. We'll start to cool gradually this weekend and more dramatically by early next week. Here's a look at the forecast highs by the time we get to Tuesday, with most of the valleys plunging into the upper 70s and 80s, in many cases 20 or more degrees cooler than where we're at right now, and well below normal for this time of year. And it looks like the cooler weather will be in no hurry to go away. We'll likely keep temperatures below average throughout next week. While it's definitely too early to write off a return of summer heat beyond then, it does look like we are transitioning into a much more fall-like pattern where ups and downs in temperature will become more pronounced versus the persistent heat of recent weeks. In addition to the cooling trend, humidity will also increase along with a much deeper marine layer, and we'll see recoveries improve also as thermal belt effects diminish, bringing shorter burn periods and overall reductions in fire danger. Breezy to strong onshore flow can also be expected with the trough, with locally elevated fire weather conditions across the deserts where windy conditions will overlap with some lingering dryness. Here's a look at the observed and forecasted ERC chart for the SouthOps region, and besides the obvious extreme heat, this has become the big story this week. ERC values have risen back to the 90th to 97th percentile in many PSAs, with a couple more days of increases still to go. Dead and live fuel moistures are also at or below critical levels in many of the low to mid elevations. This all combines to give us a very high level of what we call background fire danger. In other words, even if there are no specific critical weather or ignition triggers, the landscape is such that any well-aligned start would have the potential for significant or even extreme growth. Given that, we are going to continue with a substantially elevated risk for new large fires for at least another few days. This pattern of hot temperatures, long burn periods, and very high fire danger indices is a classic producer of major fire activity over Central and Southern California, reminiscent of the pattern that produced the bridge, line, and airport fires in 2024. So this is a stretch of days to remain on very high alert. And again, a major source of uncertainty in the forecast is what happens with the remnants of Iselle late Thursday and Friday. If somewhat widespread lightning does occur with that, then numerous fire starts would be possible across much of Central California. This is a low probability but very high impact event if it were to occur, so it should be monitored very closely. However, if we can make it to the weekend and into next week, then we can expect to see a significant decrease in fire potential as much-deserved cooler weather moves in. That's it for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. Next one will be on Thursday, August 27th.